Oh, I see some people. Hi, Mom. Hi, David and Kristen. Let me, there we go. Hey, guys.
Hey,
How you doing?
doing well, doing well. It's been a crazy month or so with the wedding and honeymoon, and
Tell me. I want to hear about it.
yeah, everything went well in New York. Great, no, it was a great experience. Family, friends, Long Island. The weather was beautiful. The place was awesome.
That's awesome. That's so
Yeah.
wonderful. And where was the honeymoon?
Originally, we were going to go to the Caribbean, but because of Zika and all that, we just changed it to the Bahamas. Went to
Okay.
Paradise Island for a week, which was really nice and relaxing and pretty cool.
Good. I'm so glad.
Thank
Mazal. That's so wonderful.
Yeah, so we're back. We're back. It was, and how's everything with you? How's the class been and everything?
Thank God, everything's good.
Excellent, excellent.
Everything's good. I know my mother is here, but she can't seem to get in. I don't know why. Mom, I see you. Just give me a second. Mom, request to speak again so that I can. Let's just give people one more second.
Sure.
So I know Brandon can't join us because he's moving to Washington now.
Oh wow, from Vegas to Washington.
So he was back here for a little while,
Right.
and now he's moving up to Washington to work on Hillary's campaign.
Oh wow, things must be getting crazy there.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, here she comes. Hello, Mother. Oh, there she is.
Yep.
Hi, Mom. Mother. Oh well, she's having trouble
Looks
connecting.
like I see her that she's joined. She's there.
Yeah, just hasn't connected yet.
Or something.
Just hasn't connected yet. That's okay. Alrighty. So tell me something, guys. What do you? I mean, we missed a few weeks with you guys, obviously, for very good reason.
Yes.
So I don't know if you want to go back. I don't know if you want to go forward. What is there something that interests you that you want us to pick up this week?
Yeah. I mean, where we last left off? Where last leave off?
I think we did. I think you guys missed. I know you missed Passover, and I think you probably missed keeping kosher the time before that. I don't know about Shabbat.
Yeah, she said she was interested in keeping kosher.
Oh, okay, we can do kosher. Sure. We can do that. Let me just get it open here. All right. Okay. Let's do this one. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I don't know where my mother is. She's having trouble connecting for some reason. That's okay. All right. Keeping kosher. My camera won't come on, she says. That's okay, Mom. Okay. Keeping kosher. So what do you know about, Christian? What do you know about keeping? What have you heard about it? I mean, what's your impression of what keeping kosher is about? And you know, both of you, feel free to jump in. What are your impressions about keeping kosher?
Isn't it like how you cut the meat? Like there's a special way of cutting the meat, right? That's what I'm told.
Okay. When you say cutting the meat, you mean literally like how the meat is sliced?
Yeah, that's what one of my friends told me. I don't know if that's true.
Okay. Was this a Jewish friend? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, but maybe I misunderstood it. I don't know.
Okay, that's all right. David, what do you? Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's not cutting the meat. It's the way the meat is cleansed, and there's a prayer the rabbi makes on it, and it's just cleaned a little bit different.
Okay. Kind of, sort of. So let's take a step back. So there are two aspects to kosher food. There's product and process. And most people think about, remember the product, but don't know that much about the process. So let's start with product. So product is pretty simple. Back in the book of Genesis, God says to us, you guys can eat all the fruits and vegetables of the land. Right? So when this whole thing started, this whole idea of humanity started, we were supposed to be vegetarians. But then we had the whole flood and Noah's Ark and stuff like that. And God had a little bit of I'd say a change of heart. Right? So in Genesis chapter 1, God says, God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply, yada, yada, yada. Every moving thing that lives shall be for food for you, as the green herb that I have given you all. Only flesh with the life thereof, meaning a live animal, which is the blood, shall you not eat. So 9 chapters into the entire Bible, God says, you know what? That whole don't eat meat thing, yeah, don't worry about it. You can go ahead and you can eat meat. But the only thing you can't eat is blood, right? You can't eat the blood that's in an animal. Okay. So that's step number 2. Step number 1 is be vegetarian. Step number 2 is, okay, you can eat animals, but you can't eat blood. Step number 3 comes from chapter 18. And it's this story about Abraham and Sarah. So Abraham has just been circumcised, and he's sitting outside his tent, and 3 strangers come up. And because he wants to be hospitable, he brings them in, and he tells Sarah to go get a lamb and make some cakes and stuff like that. So then it says, Abraham ran to the herd. He got a calf. They cooked it. And he took curd and milk and the calf and set it before them. Now, if you know anything about keeping kosher, you know that eating a calf, right, that's meat and milk, right? That's a problem. But already in chapter 18 of Genesis, God doesn't seem to have a problem with it. Abraham is eating meat and milk, all right? The next thing that we learn about is in chapter 32. So let me open that up real quick, and that's in verse 23. Oh, this is when Jacob is wrestling with an angel. And at some point during the wrestling, Jacob gets smacked in the leg, in the thigh, and he has an injury there. And from that moment on, we don't eat what's called the, what the heck is the name of that? There's a tendon there, a huge tendon. Wait, does it in here? The thigh vein, they call it in here. So there's another tradition that Jews don't eat a certain part of any animal. Forget kosher or not kosher. Even kosher animals, we don't eat this. There's a portion of the thigh that we don't eat. And that's based on the story about Jacob wrestling with the angels. Okay. So that's what Genesis tells us about product. So at first, just vegetables. Second, you can eat meat, but no blood. Third, what was third? Third was, about meat and milk. And fourth is don't eat this thigh thing. we have a couple more references in Exodus, but we really get into the meat, so to speak, of keeping kosher in Leviticus in chapter 11. And this is when God gives us a whole list of all the animals that we are allowed to eat. So you can eat any animal that has a parted hoof, like that, and an animal that chews its cud. Chewing its cud, that means that an animal chews the food, swallows it, digests it, it comes back up, chews it again, digests it, does it a few times. So let's see. You can't eat a camel, for example, because although a camel chews its cud, it doesn't have a parted hoof. You can't eat a hare, a rabbit, because it chews its cud, but it doesn't have a parted hoof. You can't eat a pig because it does have a parted hoof, but it doesn't chew its cud. Okay, so
is that the only reason why? Not because like it's dirty and it's considered that it's dirty and like it does whatever in its own mud and this and that and
no. So look, the bottom line about keeping kosher is that keeping kosher is one of those laws that doesn't really make sense. We don't really have a good reason for it, and so and we don't do well with that. And so we've throughout the centuries have continually tried to come up with reasons for why we do this. And one of the reasons that we've come up with is these animals aren't clean or they're not healthy, right? That's a bubble mice. It's not true, but that's one of the reasons that we came up to justify these laws. The truth of the matter is that we don't eat these animals. We don't eat these animals because they either don't have a cloven hoof or they don't chew their cud. It's as simple as that. Okay? That's product. Then the Torah gets into fish. Fish have to have fins and scales in order to be considered kosher. And it also gets into birds. You can't eat birds of prey. You can only eat certain kinds of birds that are not birds of prey. So we've got a whole bunch of product rules. So if I go to the market and I want to buy kosher meat, the first step is this product kosher, right? Is this animal considered a kosher animal? The chicken is considered a kosher animal. Pig is not considered a kosher animal. Eagle, I think, is not considered a kosher animal. I'm sorry?
duck.
Duck is considered a kosher animal. Okay? So the first step is the product itself kosher? But then there's the process. And this is where it gets really insane. So the process means, number one, how is the animal killed? Number two, how is the meat actually prepared and processed? Number three, not prepared. I don't mean prepared as in cooked. I mean prepared for to be sold. Number three, how is the meat then prepared and to be cooked? Right? So how is it killed? So there's the way that animals in Judaism, and we're not talking about fish here, we're just talking about mammals. The way that mammals are killed, it's called shechting, by a shochet, by a ritual, not a ritual, but a slaughterer, right? And there are a whole bunch of different laws that go along with this, but essentially the knife that's used has to be perfectly sharp. There can be no nicks or dings in the knife. It has to be perfectly sharp, and the animal is killed by cutting from ear to ear. So it cuts the jugular vein. And we do that, presumably, again, we don't really know why, but presumably we do that to minimize the pain to the animal. What I've learned, and look, I'm a vegetarian, so I'm not an expert on meat, but what I've always learned is that that's one of the quickest ways to die. And also, the other reason that is an important way to kill an animal is that it then exposes a lot of large vessels that allows the blood to drain out. Because remember, the second thing that we learned in the entire Bible about meat is that you can't eat blood. And so after the animal is killed, it's hung, or it's on the ground so that all the blood has to pour out. They have to get as much blood as possible. That's not enough. So then they soak the meat. Well, actually, first they cut it up. They take that thigh piece out. They don't use the thigh piece. They cut up the pieces of meat, and then they soak the meat and they salt the meat. And the salting and the soaking draws out all of the extra blood. So we have this whole process of just preparing the meat to be sold before anyone even sees it. Then, once we have a kosher product that's been killed in a kosher way, that's been drained of all of its blood, that's been soaked and salted appropriately to draw out all of that blood, that doesn't have the thigh vein in it, then we can sell it. Right? So then the meat is sold in a market. It's considered kosher. And there's no rabbi making a blessing over this meat. But there are rabbis that supervise this whole process. So there are rabbis in different kosher slaughterhouses that supervise that the killing is being done properly, that the soaking and salting is being done properly, and that these animals are not being killed in the same plant as non-kosher animals. Okay. So then you go to the market, you buy your kosher chicken, you buy your Empire kosher chicken, right? And then the rest of the process kicks in. And that is, how do you prepare it? Do you prepare that meat with kosher dishes, with kosher pans, with kosher pots, however you're preparing it? Do you mix it with milk? Remember, we had Abraham mixing meat and milk. That was okay for him, but for us today, that's a no-no. And that comes from a story in the Bible about where it says, do not mix a calf with its mother's milk. Do not boil a calf. Sorry. Do not boil a calf, it says, in its mother's milk. And from that, the rabbis derived that you shouldn't cook meat in milk. You shouldn't. Actually, they actually derive 3 different laws, because that verse, don't boil a calf in its mother's milk, is repeated 3 times in the Bible. So they come up with 3 distinct laws. First is, don't cook a kid in its mother's milk. Don't cook meat and milk. Second is, don't eat meat and milk. So, you know, if you went to McDonald's, you couldn't buy a cheeseburger, right? Even though you didn't cook it. And the third is, don't benefit from mixing meat and milk. So you can't be a chef at McDonald's. You can't buy food from McDonald's. And some would say you can't even work at McDonald's because you're getting paid and you're benefiting from the sale of the mixing of meat and milk. Right? So those are the 3 laws that they draw out from that. So once you've purchased your kosher meat and you're preparing it, you're preparing it in kosher dishes or kosher pans. You're not mixing it with milk. So you're making sure that you're following all these laws. Then you have kosher food. I'll never forget, I was up in Boston, and one of my congregants was complaining about how their grandson or son or something like that was going off to college, and there was nothing for him to eat at college. All he could eat in the cafeteria was tuna fish. It was all there was for him to eat, because that's the only kosher food. And what I wanted to say is that tuna may not be kosher, right? The tuna itself is kosher. But remember, product is only half of the picture. Process is the other half. So was that fish prepared in kosher dishes? The spoon that they're serving the tuna fish with, was that just in the seafood salad? Because if it was, that makes the tuna salad not kosher anymore, right? Because it mixes it up. So there are a lot of different concerns or pieces to keeping kosher. And in the conservative world, forget conservative, in the liberal Jewish world, if people want to keep kosher, most of the time what that looks like is they keep kosher in their home, and then they eat some version out of the home. So for example, we have a kosher home. In my house, we have a kosher home, but we'll go out and eat. But we won't eat any meat out of the house. Right? We'll only eat vegetarian out of the house.
Now, kosher, like, do you have like 2 separate like kitchens? 2 separate.
So you don't need 2 separate kitchens. You do need 2 separate sets of dishes. So we have 2 separate sets of we actually have 3 separate sets of dishes. We have dairy, meat, and Chinese food, or pizza. Because every once in a while we order a pizza, but we won't put it on our plates, right? So we have, I joke, we have paper goods, but that's kind of our 3rd set of dishes. So we have meat dishes, we have dairy dishes, we have meat pots, we have dairy pots, we have meat silverware, we have dairy silverware. And when we're serving meat, we only use the meat stuff. When we're serving dairy, we only use the dairy stuff. And then for Passover, we have another set of dishes, because on Passover, you can't use any of the regular dishes.
What about refrigerators? 2 separate refrigerators? Or? We have one
refrigerator. You can have one refrigerator, because the food in the refrigerator is usually packaged, right? It's not, I mean, you're not going to put a load of brisket in your refrigerator unwrapped or something. So that's not such an issue. Some people do have 2 separate dishwashers or 2 separate stoves. We don't. And the vast majority don't. You just clean it out in between. You know, some people in between each cycle of dishes, if you're going to run a meat cycle of dishes, you might run an empty cycle before you run the meat cycle. But most people would argue that the heat that's involved in the washing of dishes or the heat that's involved in cooking burns off any residue from prior meals, and so it doesn't become an issue according to most people that I've read about. Heat is a really important piece of kashrut also, because heat both complicates kashrut and kind of fixes the complications. So one of the things I was going to say before is that if you do eat non-kosher food out of the house, if you eat vegetarian food out of the house, many people will distinguish between hot dairy and cold dairy. So some people will eat a salad out, but they won't eat a piece of pizza out. Because, as soon as you introduce heat, then it complicates things. If you're cooking a pizza in a pizza oven and you just cooked pepperoni pizza in there, some of what you're cooking seeps into the vessel. So let me give you an example. So I'm making a beef stew, right? When I make a beef stew in a pot, most pots, not all pots, but most pots, like especially like a crock pot or something like that, they're porous. And so they actually absorb some of the flavor of the food that you're cooking. So when you reheat that crock pot, it will then release some of what it absorbed before, because the molecules contract and expand with heat. And so whenever you're using heat, that complicates things a little bit. You don't want to put, you can't use a pot where you cooked something hot, meat, for dairy. But for example, if I had a metal bowl, right, and I tossed some cold, I don't know, meat in a marinade, it wouldn't be so hard for me to re-kosher that and then put dairy in it. That wouldn't be such an issue. But if it was hot, that would make it much more complicated.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Mhm.
What else? What have I missed about keeping kosher? So, so why? Okay, so you know what? So let's go back to the original question. Why do all of this? I mean, really, why bother keeping kosher? What's this all about? You want to take a guess? You want to throw some ideas out?
I mean, following tradition. Somebody said it years ago that if this is what the right way of eating is, and
Tradition. Yeah, no. Look, that's a big piece of it. There was just, so on Passover, the laws of kashrut are even more crazy, right? Because you can't eat any leavened bread or anything like that. And there's an kind of an ancient rule, it's not so ancient actually, from the 13th century in France, I think it started, called the law of kitniot. And kitniot are, hold on a second. Kitniot are legumes. So peas, beans, rice, peanuts, things like that. And back then, they outlawed them. They said on Passover, you cannot eat all of these legumes. They didn't really,
if you're like Ashkenazi or Sephardic,
right. The Sephardi Jews eat them. Ashkenazi Jews don't, right? They did not have a good reason to do this. It was a stupid law from the get-go. But we followed it for 7 centuries. We've done it ever since the 13th century, for 8 centuries, whatever. So back in December, the conservative movement, the conservative rabbinical group, said, essentially, this is a dumb rule, and we're getting rid of it. And so all of a sudden, you had Jews like me, although I've eaten kitniot for years before, but Jews like me who care about this kind of stuff, all of a sudden they could have sushi on Passover. All of a sudden they could have peanut butter. All of a sudden they could have corn and rice and all these other things. And it
opens it up a lot more.
It opens it up a lot. And that kitniot, that particular set of laws about legumes, really the only reason we followed it was exactly what you said, tradition. That really is the only reason why we did it for 8 centuries. It's kind of amazing. So that's a big piece of keeping kosher. That's a big piece of it. Another piece I would say is because God said so. You know, I mean, we look, our parents, you know, said to us, what, you know, we would say, why do I have to do this? And they would say, because I said so. Well, this is one of those because I said so's. Us, you have to do this because I told you to, period. End of discussion. I don't have to give you a reason. I don't have to tell you why. You just have to do it. And I would say that one other reason is that keeping kosher, like all of the mitzvot, like all the commandments, is about setting limits. When we started this whole discussion, remember the very first rule? The very first rule was you can eat vegetables, grains and vegetables and fruits, right? No meat at all. And then 9 chapters in, God says, probably under pressure because we were kvetching maybe, you know what? Go ahead, eat your meat. But God says, I am not going to make it easy for you. You're only going to be able to eat certain kinds of meat. You're going to have to have a cloven hoof and chew their cud. You're going to have to kill them a certain way. You're going to have to drain off all the blood. You're not going to be able to eat certain parts. Then you're going to have to salt it and wrap it. Then you have to sell it for twice the price of regular meat. Then you're going to have to cook it in a special way. And you can't have Parmesan cheese on it. I'm going to make it really difficult for you, God says. And I think that God does that to set limits. God says to us, you can eat meat. You can eat anything, pretty much anything. But recognize what it means when you eat meat. It means that you are taking a life. Recognize what you're doing. God doesn't say don't do it. God doesn't say it's bad to eat meat. God just says recognize the importance of what you're doing, right? Of this act of eating meat. Do you ever see Avatar, the movie Avatar?
Yeah.
So there's a scene in Avatar when I don't remember any of their names, but the woman and the guy, the guy who's human, who kind of becomes one of them, and then the woman. So they end up killing an animal, I think for food. I think they end up killing him for food. And the guy, he's ready to slice the animal open and start eating. And the woman says, no, stop. And they both put their hands on the head of the animal and to feel the life force of that animal. And then they thank the animal for giving its life so that they could benefit from it. That to me is like, that is kashrut in a nutshell. You know, that's what it's all about. It's about recognizing the gift that these animals have given to us, the gift that God has given to us, and recognizing that we're not completely in charge, that there are limits to what we're allowed to eat, to how we're allowed to eat them. And by having all of these laws, it's a constant reminder. It's just a constant reminder. When I go to the supermarket, if I want a particular kind of food, I have to know what I'm putting in my body. I have to look at it and look for the symbol, because there are symbols on kosher foods, right? There's an O with a K in it, or an O with a U in it. Those are all different symbols. I have to look at the food. I have to know what I'm buying. I have to be conscious and aware and thoughtful about what I'm putting in my body, and where that came from. Some people have, the word kasher actually means fit for use. And a lot of people have actually suggested that we should expand the definition of what's kosher. I had a dear friend in college and rabbinical school who's now a rabbi in Washington, D.C. His name is Fred Daub, who's a radical environmentalist. And he has said many times that back in the day, back in the 80s and 90s, when we were all kids, or when I was a kid, you're too young probably, but everything was in styrofoam. And he said styrofoam is not kosher. It's not fit for use because it lacks, the use of styrofoam shows a lack of appreciation for the world and for the gift that we're about to get, because it wasn't recyclable and it did such damage to the environment. So a lot of people say that, plastics aren't kosher. Now, of course, they are technically kosher. You can't have non-kosher plastics. But if you broaden the definition of what's kosher to something that's fit for use, something that helps us tap into the whole point of keeping kosher, a deeper awareness, a deeper appreciation. If you can expand that awareness, then what's kosher for you may include food that's organic. or cage-free eggs. You know, I have a friend up in Boston who he keeps kosher, but he also wanted, I forget if it was range-free or range-free chicken. I think, is that what they call it? Free range chicken. And he was having a really hard time finding both free range and kosher. Like he just could not find free range kosher chicken. And he ended up having to make a decision. He ended up having to choose which was more important to him. And he went with free range. He said that was the more important to him. That was kosher. That embodied the ideals of kashrut more than, you know, just a chicken that you know, that has a stamp of approval on it. So so different people interpret and practice keeping kosher differently. What are your practices? Are there foods that you restrict for yourselves, or do you just kind of do anything?
Do anything?
Yeah.
Kristen, lose the face. I'm not guilting you. Come on. There's no guilt here. Come on. No, I'm just asking.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. We do
anything.
anything. I mean, me too. For a little bit, I was pretty good, and I consciously and mindfully try to stop. This was years ago, but I don't know. Now, these days, I pretty much indulge in whatever.
Do you have a consciousness about, forget kashrut for a moment, but just when you're eating, I mean, do you have a consciousness about where this came from? Even if it's about calorie intake, I mean, do you have any sort of consciousness that you draw upon when you're eating, or is it really just it tastes good, I'm going to eat it?
No, you know, we try to eat healthy. You know, we definitely try to eat healthy. Salads, you know, we definitely try to, you know, not have fatty, you know, fast food, you know, things of that nature, you know.
So I mean, that's a step toward consciousness and awareness about what you're eating. You know, I've been losing a lot of weight lately, and one of the tricks that I tell myself, excuse me, is because I'm pretty good at keeping kosher in the house. I tell myself that food, whatever, that chocolate cake, it's not kosher, right? And I tell myself that things that I shouldn't be eating aren't kosher because then I won't eat them.
It helps you, yeah, whatever helps.
Right. But you know, one thing you might want to think about is how can you kick that awareness up? How can you not only think about calorie intake or fat intake or things like that, but can you bring an awareness to the gift? That sounds a little corny, but go with me. To the gift that the animal that you're eating is giving to you, right? That was a life that maybe had family, that had, and I don't want to sound like a PETA fanatic or anything, but and I'm certainly not suggesting you not eat meat, but can you bring an awareness, a deeper awareness to the fact that what you're doing is fine and wonderful and accepted, and you should enjoy and you should relish it, and you can have an appreciation for where that food came from, maybe the animal from which it came, maybe an awareness of the working environment for the people who packaged that meat. You know, it's so sterile to us nowadays. I mean, we just go to Publix or Stop and Shop or wherever we go, and it's all wrapped up. We don't even know we don't even have any idea where this meat came from, right? And I think that keeping kosher is part of a process of becoming aware of some of those questions. Where did this come from? What were the working environments like for the people who provided this to me? I think that's a piece of it. And then there's the other piece, is that God said so. You know, do you feel a tug from God to limit what you put in your body? And you know, you may feel that tug now, you may feel it later, I may feel it now, I may not feel it later. So it's not, I don't think it's a constant. I don't think it's, you decide that you feel that tug and it's always there. I think that it's a work in progress. But what you might want to, one of the things you might want to think about as you're sort of raising your consciousness is there a tug, you know, does God want me to eat this? And even if I don't understand the why, right? That's our problem, is that we want to know why. We always want to know why we have to do something.
Yeah.
But is it possible to say, you know what, today the why doesn't matter. Today what matters is I feel that tug. So I don't know if you've eaten dinner yet, but if you haven't, or even tomorrow, you have a choice, right? Every time you put food in your body, you have a choice. And you can sanctify your body and sanctify the act of eating by raising your consciousness, whether that's through eating organic, whether it's through keeping kosher, whether it's through however you choose to do it. You can sanctify that most basic act by raising your awareness and by being grateful for the life of that animal.
Is that enough? Being like appreciative and grateful, is that enough than the first couple of things?
Look, I don't know what enough is. I mean, who knows what, I don't know. What's enough is what feels right to you. I don't know what enough is. I would say that, like everything in Judaism, it is one step. You know, it's one step. I mean, what you might want to do is, if this is a path you wanted to go down, and there's really and truly, there is no pressure here. I found it very meaningful, but there's no pressure for you. If you wanted to go down this path, you know, take a step. Maybe avoid pork products. Maybe that's one step. Or avoid shellfish products. Or maybe go a different route. Maybe choose only, you know, cage-free or free range. I mean, there are lots of different entry points to living a more aware life. But fundamentally, I think that's what kashrut is about. Yes, we do it because God told us to. Yes. But if I had to come up with a reason why, it would be to raise our awareness. We go through life so numb to everything. And when you have to be careful about everything that you put in your body, when you have to be aware of that this is a life that I'm eating, when you have to have that level of awareness, when you have to have a level of appreciation to God for giving you food, to the animal, to the workers, to all of this stuff, it elevates a very mundane life to a very sacred place. It really is changing your state of mind about life. And it's incredibly powerful. I mean, imagine living a life where things like food mattered, like really mattered, you know? Mm-hmm. I mean, imagine living a life where the things that we take for granted every day began to have real meaning. That's a powerful way to live.
Yeah.
That is a powerful way to live. It's not an easy way to live. It is most definitely not an easy way to live, but it's a powerful way to live. And if you can capture, you know, if keeping kosher speaks to you and you try a little bit of it, and you can capture even just a moment of that awareness, even a moment of that sanctity, that's an amazing gift. That really is.
It sounds like
Yeah.
You know, dining rather than just eating.
Dieting, I'm not sure I'd say dieting, and here's why. Because dieting is not a change of life. It's not a way of life. You can't diet forever, right? You go on a diet. There's a reason why they say you go on a diet, right?
No, not diet. I said it was like more like dining.
I'm sorry. I apologize. Yes.
Like, you know, dining rather than just sitting down and eating really quick.
That's nice. That's beautiful. That's like that. So dining as opposed to eating. And it reminds me of like having that when your work becomes your having a calling rather than just work, right? Right. And that's what Judaism is all about, right? It's about elevating the mundane to the holy. It's about creating holiness in our world. It's about finding sanctity. That's what all this crazy stuff is about. It's all about that. And kashrut is a big one. Why? Because we eat all the damn time. We are always eating, right? As soon as we get off tonight, I'm going downstairs to have dinner. We are always eating. And so it's an easy, well, it's not easy, but it's an obvious way to add sanctity to our lives. So that is kashrut, guys.
Yeah. I mean, definitely something to think about.
It is.
It is. Look, give it some thought. In the syllabus, there are some nice links. The first 3 links are they're articles. What is kashrut? Keeping kashrut in your home and outside, and then one on why keep kosher. There's some really nice little articles. If you want to learn more, it's a good place to start. And just a quick Google search will give you a billion different results about how to get started. But yeah, look, awareness. Holiness, that's what it's all about, guys. That's what it's all about.
I agree.
All right, so I'm going to let you all go for tonight. I'm so glad I got to see you.
You too.
I can't believe you're married. Oh, my God.
I'll see you there. Yeah, definitely. It feels nice. It feels really nice.
Did you guys, did you have a moment after the ceremony to be alone?
Yes.
Good.
We did, in the bridal suite.
Yeah. We went up to the bridal. We didn't do the cocktail hour. We just went right to the bridal suite, just us. They brought some food to us. We got to just chill out for like a half hour. So just try to appreciate the moment,
Whenever I do weddings, I tell my couples that to me is the most important part of the whole wedding.
You're right.
That half an hour. Because it's the first time you can look at each other and say, oh my God, what did we just do? Right? You can look at her and you can say, oh my God, you're my wife. And you can look at him and say, oh my God, you're my husband. It is, I just think, the precious few moments. So I'm really glad that you had that.
Yeah, definitely. The rabbi we had, I mean, he made it. He was awesome. He was hysterical. Everyone loved him. Like it was definitely our time. It worked out. It was nice. We did the whole hoopah thing and everything. It was really nice.
I'm so glad. I'm so happy for you both. Good.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, guys. Oh, pictures. Show me.
What?
Oh, wait.
Wait, hold it still. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. You're gorgeous.
Thank you.
Are you in a white tux?
Gray.
Oh, it's a great, beautiful.
Gray, light gray, like a pink tie and stuff. Those were the colors, and it was pretty
nice.
Yeah, definitely.
Christian, was that your choice?
Yes.
Yeah, of course it was. Because we don't matter.
Obviously, I didn't choose that.
We do not matter. The rooms do not matter.
No.
I am so happy for both of you. Mazal tov.
Thank you. Tada. Nice catching up. Nice seeing you and everything.
All right, I'll see you guys in a couple weeks, all right?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.